fill me with your grace, yeah. And Spirit, fill me with your love. Say, Spirit.
Good morning. Welcome back to Real Estate and More. Our special guest is a man some say is one of the most talented singer-songwriters and guitar players of modern day. He writes songs that are moving and compelling, songs that touch the human spirit. He wrote Someday, chosen as the theme song for the 2006 Olympics, and has a new song out, Lord Have Mercy on Me.
And Spirit, fill me with your love. Say, Spirit, fill me with your righteousness. Say, Lord, have mercy on me.
Buy it. He has toured and performed in many countries, and simply put, he's a great guy. Please welcome this talented musician to our show, Mr. Steve Knight.
Hey.
Tell me, Steve, when did you first recognize your intense interest in music?
Well, so the first musical memory I got is with my dad. We had 3 kids, so my brother and my sister, and I was the youngest of 3. And he would play the auto harp, and he would tell stories. And we would do these bluegrass kind of mountain music festivals. And one time we won a bag of apples. But no, my first memory was us, 3 of us, my brother, me, and my sister would all sing. My dad would play the auto harp. And I was probably 4 years old, so.
Wow. Was he did he have a voice similar to yours?
No, he had a smooth kind of.
George Jones?
No, he wasn't too country. He was. My dad, what kind of voice would he have had? He kind of had an Appalachian folk. He's a folk singer. He's a storyteller. Yeah, because he would like to tell the story and the history of the song before he would sing it. So whatever the song would be, he'd have the history. He would do really cool songs like Amazing Grace, and then he'll tell you the story of the history of who wrote it, when they wrote it, why they wrote it, that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Now, folks, there's several different Steve Knights around who are also performers. One who does guitar instruction, and the English fellow who did Peaky Blinders.
Oh, yeah.
However, today we have the best of the best with Steve Knight, who wrote Someday, the theme song for the 2006 Olympic Games, and performed that song with the popular band Flipsyde. And Steve, how did that song ever come about, and how did you ever create it?
Man, what a fun question. The Flipsyde song Someday, me and Piper's the MC. He grew up in Oakland. And I'm a white guy, grew up in Alabama, so the pair of us, it was interesting that you wouldn't see us together in terms of just being on paper, but we started writing together. We became fast friends. He was an amazing lyricist as a rapper, and I'm more of a melody guy, and so I had about 6-7 ideas. I had a bunch of song ideas, and one night I had 1,000 some days. I was, someday this, someday that, someday this. And Piper likes to say it was on my birthday over cold Chinese food that he came over and he helped me whittle down the someday to what it is today. Uh-huh. And so that song ended up getting assigned to Interscope. Interscope Records was Jimmy Iovine's label, probably the biggest record label at the time in the U.S. Their roster had Eminem and Gwen Stefani and Lady Gaga and Black Eyed Peas. The list goes on and on and on. But we were in front of Jimmy Iovine. He liked Someday. He liked Flipside. And so off we go. And then the Winter Olympics came up, and they were trying to find a song to connect with a younger audience. So NBC had 2,000 songs submitted from labels and record executives and all kinds. But I heard they were about to give up on the song. They had about gone through 2,000 songs. And at the last hour, the last moment, Someday came in and they said, hey, that's the song.
Unbelievable story.
So yeah, it was really cool.
Unbelievable story.
Yeah.
I used to have Fly Hawaii a lot. And I had Chris Christopherson on the airplane many, many times.
Wow.
Great singer-songwriter. Great. I said, where do these songs come from? And he looked at me one time and he said, from life and usually on a bar napkin. So when you did Someday, when you write it, do you actually write the notes, or is it just out of the heart and on a bar napkin?
Well, everyone's different. This one was, I had a feeling, I had a chord progression and I had an emotion. And this Someday, like I said, I sang someday this, someday that, someday this. I was up late at night, you know, I'd probably done a little bit of cocaine.
Ooh.
And I just couldn't sleep. And I just was singing Someday, and I had 1,000 somedays.
Wow.
So that was one of the you know, but every song's different, man. You feel like you're channeling or you're tapping into some type of life force, the muse, you feel like you're partnering with, you feel like you're an antenna receiving a message, and then you're just trying to communicate it. I feel like the songs choose you. I don't know if you necessarily choose the song sometimes.
It just comes into your mind and the way you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, being complimentary, we also had Chris Stapleton, and your voice is a lot like, I mean, it's similar in nature to Chris Stapleton, and when you put it to a song, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I like that new song, Lord Have Mercy on Me. You can find that on Spotify. You can find a way to buy it, do it, because it is pretty amazing. There is a little bit of difference I notice in some of your earlier songs as opposed to what you're doing today.
Yeah.
The other was more of a hip hop type influence, and today it senses that maybe you're connecting somewhere as a different source to come up with that song.
Yeah.
Got anything to talk about there? I noticed you mentioned cocaine a little bit earlier.
Oh yeah.
Talk to me about that, and then we'll talk back about the music.
Yeah, so in my 20s, I was sampling whatever I could get my hands on, right? And so I was always, I wanted to find the best party, the best drugs. I had a lot of trauma growing up when I was a kid. And so I guess that was just an escape. I started to learn how to numb. But, you know, I rededicated my life, and faith became a huge part of my life. You can't be where I was. I was at what they call rock bottom, in those dark places where you want to stop, but you can't stop. And, you know, the cool thing about it was I was in the Coast Guard for 4 years, and the veterans, I have to give a shout out to the VA. The VA helped save my life. I was in Oakland and I needed help, and I went to the VA, and, that and, you know, my higher power in Christ, really turned my life around. I tell people I wouldn't be sitting here today if God didn't show up in my life. I was on a road to nowhere, and you know, God kind of stepped in and intervened in my life. So faith plays a huge role in my life. And so getting back to like Lord Have Mercy, a lot of my music now is really trying to express my faith in that higher power. And that faith is Jesus Christ for me. So it's a trip, man. It's been a journey, and it's a trip, man.
Yeah. Well, when I first heard Lord Have Mercy, when I first heard it, I thought, wow, what a great song. And I mentioned it to you, and you said, well, it's a very, very, very simple song.
Yeah.
You said that just like that.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because it's a simple song, but it conveys something that touches the chord in all of us.
Yeah.
And I find it just to be amazing. I hope our listeners go out and actually buy this, because it is one remarkable song. You know, when I was doing business in Oakland a lot of years ago, decades ago, I ran into similar a situation as you. You mentioned your co-founder of Flipsyde.
Yep, Piper.
Piper. Well, I was an operator of a business in Oakland, and there was a black reverend. Here's a young kid of 30, which was me, but, you know, I grew up in Richmond. I didn't have any issues like that at all.
Right.
And a black reverend of 70. And this man did so much for the community, Reverend Herbert T. Geis. and he started his church, and it was big facility. We operated the supermarket, and we paid our lease payments to the church. But Reverend Guys had this remarkable giving spirit to him, and I'll never forget it. And he and I just became very well acquainted and good friends. And one of the things that he did was he founded this elementary school, and it still exists today after his passing. I think he was 102 when he finally left this world. You know, and what you do with your music can be just as effective in doing great deeds for the community. Yeah. So back on the founding of Flipsyde, you know, mention Piper, how did all of that come about? And you still like the man, right? Oh yeah, me and Piper are, as they say, brothers from another mother. He's working in screenplays right now. He wrote, a screenplay that won at the Tribeca Film Festival. So he's in a mentorship program. He's writing screenplays for Hollywood right now, which is kind of cool. But Flipsyde, me and, like I said, I had probably about 6 or 7 songs, and none of them were finished. And Piper was on an independent label that I was on, and so we were kind of label mates. And so we would hang out. Well, he was going to SF State at the time, and for his spring break, he comes by and he knocks on my window every morning and said, "Hey, we're going to the studio." I call Piper the Shark. He never stops. He's always moving. And so he kind of lit a fire under me to get in the studio that week when he was in spring break. And by the end of that week, we had about all the ideas that I had. 6 or 7 songs were finished because Piper threw his verses on them. And so it was this very cool connection we had, that we were finishing each other's sentences. I was expressing an idea I had. He would help me pin it down, get the words down and figure it out. I would have an idea of a chorus and he would help me with the verses. So it was this very collaborative effort. And then he wrote a movie that was they were kind of at this place called Soundwave Studios, and Dave Lopez, our guitar player, was the manager of Soundwave Studios. And so there was this movie that Piper, it was like a little independent, and they needed a white dude because they needed a cop in the movie. Piper's black dude growing up in Oakland. So they called me. They're like, "Hey man, you got to come play a cop." So I show up down at Soundwave, and Dave is in there. And I can remember seeing Dave in my mind at Blake's in Berkeley. He had played in a Zeppelin tribute band, and he was killing it. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think I don't even know if I put it together that day, but I was like, I think this guy is the guitar player from this Zeppelin tribute band." And I said, "I'm a songwriter." And he kind of had a guitar in the office, and he kind of just gives it to me and puts it in my hand, like, "Show me what you got, kid." He was a bit older than me. So once I played Dave Someday. And, the rest is history, as they say. Dave knew everybody in the Bay, knew all the music producers. And so when me, Dave, and Piper all got in a room together, you had this kid from Alabama singing blues. You had Dave from Chile who was doing Latin guitar, like some Santana vibes. And you had Piper who was like on some Tupac revolutionary, hip hop stuff. So you had these real 3 worlds coming together that you would not see on paper. You would be like, "Oh yeah, this doesn't work." But the music brought us together, and we had different cultures, different backgrounds, different beliefs, but we all believed in each other, and we all believed in the music. Unbelievable. Yeah. Music has such a healing power to it. Yeah. Have you ever been to the Museum of Music in Arizona, down in Phoenix? I haven't. You go in there, you're in there for an entire day, just going from one exhibit to the next. And there's one exhibit that I recall very clearly. They've actually done research, and they found that if you play a musical instrument and you sing, that it activates places in your mind that no other activity will. It has such a healing power. And going from there, you've mentioned personally that you think you found your calling to be a worship pastor. Yeah. Talk to me. Man, that's a story. To try to get people to understand the, I guess,
context of a worship pastor, right? My grandmother, Sue Wyatt, started a ministry called Living Waters in Asheville, North Carolina. And it's on the French Broad River. It's about 40 minutes from Asheville, North Carolina. So beautiful country in the Smoky Mountains.
Very beautiful.
Right? And I would spend my summers up there. The story of how my grandmother, who was a woman leading, men essentially with this vision she had from God, and people were looking at her kind of like she had three heads, because she was going to businessmen saying, hey, this is going to be a free retreat center. People that can give can give. We'll never ask for any money. Try getting that on the business plan, right?
Got to monetize something somewhere.
As a lady in the late 70s. So she started it the year I was born, 1979. I was born, and she started that ministry. Well, I was one of the youngest of all the grandkids. I was probably one of the youngest of 18. And I would be the one. They wanted to get rid of me for the summer. What are we going to do with Steven? That was the big topic of discussion back then, because I was a wild youngest of three, ADHD, all that kind of stuff. And so if I wasn't in sports, they wanted to figure out. So I would spend my summers up at Living Waters with my grandparents at this retreat center. And she would pray over me. She would call me her little prophet, and people would come from all over the South, Florida and Georgia, and just to be kind of sit at her feet and be prayed over. She was a real deal. When you were in the room with her, you felt the presence of God. You felt the love of Christ. And so people would come from all around just to hear her teach, to hear her encourage them, to hear her talk about the word. That was just, the Holy Spirit would just flow through her. So she had a huge impact on my life, probably the biggest modeling behavior of anybody in my life. Fast forward, I do things my own way. I go out and get signed Interscope. I use all my talents and all my gifts God has given me, really just to serve myself and to figure out kind of things that I think are cool at the time. I'm not really engaged in any kind of spiritual life. I feel like, I was kind of understand there's a God, there's a creator, but I'm going to put God on the shelf for a few years, and I'm going to do it how I want to do it. And I got signed Interscope, get the theme song for the Olympics. So now I think I'm real hot stuff. You really can't speak into my life. I'm in my early 20s. And so you really couldn't tell me anything at that point. I'm like, I got it figured out. And that led me to a road of, I got dropped by the label.
Oh no.
My girl left me. It's a country song, man.
Yeah, I'm a country boy.
Yeah.
Hatfield, country, Lucabaugh, Texas, Wayland. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. I lost my girl, or she left me because I had a drug problem. I was on opiates at the time. I had just started to get into heavier drugs.
Oh, man.
And so, but I was just a weekend warrior. I was just, hey, I'm going to hang out and have a good time when I want to have a good time. But then everything was taken from me overnight. My record deal, my girl. And that's when I really just said, you know what? F it all.
Yeah.
So now I'm really just hit that road of like, you know what? Now I'm a daily drug addict. I'm down in Oakland getting the tar.
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
Terrible.
It was as low as you could go. And you tell people, how did you get that far out? And I tell people, one step at a time.
Yeah.
You start with some Vicodins, and then you have the opiate crisis with the oxys, and then the oxys are, kids are just snorting them, having fun. Next thing you know, you don't have money to buy those oxys. Now you're on the street down in Oakland and West Oakland, and you're buying it dope off the street from,
whoever,
dealers.
Yeah.
And so, looking back, God was with me during all of that. God protected me. I saw God's hand in leading me to where I used to get dope across the street. When I cried out to God, I said, I can't do it. I can't quit. I want to quit. I'm in tears. And I feel like God just put on my heart, you need to go to the VA. Mm-hmm. And very clear, very soft, still voice, you need to go to the VA. And I get on my phone and I look on my phone and across the street at 24th in San Pablo, I used to get dope at 23rd in San Pablo. Across the street at 24th.
I had a store at 27th in San Pablo.
Yeah.
That old Safeway store. That was mine.
I know where that is then.
Absolutely.
I already know where that is. Well, it was just in that moment, across the street was where the VA was. I didn't know that. And so I went over to the VA. It was a Thursday. And they said, can you be here tomorrow? I went in and basically said, I'm an addict. I can't get off anything. I need help. They said, can you be here tomorrow? I said, I can be here tomorrow at 8 a.m. Every other year, just every other year, not even every year, but every other year, they have a kind of like, if all the resources the VA had, they would bring you out to this abandoned airfield, and they'd round up all these veterans. And if you needed, housing, if you needed this, if you needed haircut. That, it was like haircut, all that stuff. And so they had one spot left. They said, can you be here tomorrow? I said, yes. He said, we had somebody fall out. We have one spot left to get you out there, to get you plugged into some services.
That was your
and
spot.
So that was my spot. And so that was my start to recovery. But, and I feel like in that moment, I rededicated my life to the Lord. And I said, whatever's left with me, whatever talents, whatever gifts, whatever time you've given me, I'm gonna try to be in service with my gifts. And that was kind of the switch of the perspective of learning how to
switch.
Total switch, how to have a servant's heart, how to bless and encourage people with the music and the gifts God's given me. And so when you talk about the power of music and the healing power of music, God knew what he was doing when he created music.
And it speaks right to you.
It speaks right to the heart.
Interesting. At the very beginning, it's like when you look at lobsters, they put them in a tank and they begin turning the temperature up, and the lobster is there, and he doesn't really realize that lobster is going to go on someone's plate momentarily. Yeah. When you start drugs, whether or not it's drugs or alcohol or any type of addiction, this is where it starts. So a person, for everybody, should kind of keep an eye out that it's easy to start walking down that path. And once you do, it gets harder and harder and harder. Then the next step is to basically say, hey, listen, I'm here, VA. I need some help. I can't get off of this. Yeah. And that's where your life turned. And, that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you've been at the top and you've done so well with your musical career. Yeah. And that's why I have to, as an observer, I hear the music before and I hear the music now. The source of the power seems to have changed. Lord have mercy on me. Yeah. I think it's just absolutely fantastic what you've done and what you went through and where you are. And, I have to hand it to you. To do that, it takes a lot of everything you got. Oh, yeah. And your faith is it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back type of deals. There's a lot of relapses, and 2012 they got me on a blocker called Suboxone, and that helped me, got on a replacement therapy drug. But yeah, I would tell anybody that's listening to this that's struggling in addiction, you got to get in community, you got to get with some people that are healthy, that are trying to do it.
Community is so important. We just did a full show on 9/11 and how after the event, everyone was shocked, didn't know what to do. And then the community around the people, whether or not they're firefighters, whether or not they're airline pilots, it didn't matter. Just normal, people. It's all about community. Yeah. And having the love of the community just makes so much difference.
Yeah, it's this, you just can't do it alone. It takes a healthy community, and then hopefully one that's, plugged into a higher power that's walking out the what it looks like to walk in faith. But it's a trip, man. I'm really convinced there's no way I should be here. So God has a purpose and a plan, and it's not done with me yet.
Oh no! You're so much better than what you were back in the day when you were so great on top of the big soapbox. And obviously, your faith has been your ladder back to being the great guy that you are. Steve, a smart guy like you would think that you would see addiction coming down the road when you first start out like that. What happened? I mean,
well, I was saying, there's a couple different things. One, I had a lot of trauma growing up, and that's a whole other separate conversation to have. But I think in the early 90s, I started to glorify some of my favorite artists, from Sublime to, Red Hot Chili Peppers. There was this whole 90s grunge movement that happened that a lot of those guys, Alice in Chains, ended up into the heavier drugs, specifically heroin. And so after I had written Someday and had some success, there was a part of me that was like, you have to look behind the curtain to see the Wizard of Oz or something. You had to go see what the taste was to write the next big song.
Well, I have to tell you, Steve, it's just been a wonderful, wonderful time hearing your journey through life. Very talented singer, songwriter, composer, founder of the band Flipsyde, I can't quite talk here this morning, and performer in his own right. Remarkably, I sincerely enjoyed your story and your personal journey through life and its setbacks, the positive changes you've made, especially what you did to come to singing that song that Have Mercy on Me, Lord. It's just unbelievable. I would go out and buy it right now. He's supported by a community of like-minded people, a great guy. Thank you, Steve Knight, for being with us today. You've been listening to Real Estate and More, and it's more about the more interesting people today than real estate, but next week we'll talk about real estate on KGO 810 AM, The Spread. I'm Michael Hatfield, your host. Tune in next Saturday morning at 9 when we can once again talk about Bay Area real estate, interesting topics, and interesting people. Have an outstanding week.
The views and opinions expressed are based on current economic and market conditions and are subject to change. Information on the show provided for illustrator purposes only and does not constitute professional or legal advice. Information from sources deemed reliable, but accuracy and completeness not guaranteed. Michael Hatfield and the Michael Hatfield Remax team have no liability for information discussed on the show. Consult with qualified professionals prior to taking action.
We at the Michael Hatfield Remax team enjoy representing our valued clients. If you or someone you know is interested in buying or selling and wishes to schedule a complimentary appointment with the Michael Hatfield Remax team, call us at 925-322-7775. That's 925-322-7775. Or go to our website, michaelhatfieldhomes.com.
I'm Michael Hatfield. Thank you for listening today. Join us next Saturday at 9 a.m. for the next Real Estate and More, when we again sharpen our focus on how's the market.
Join us next Saturday morning at 9 and have a wonderful week. Best wishes and blessings to you. DRE 01493761.